Hello, this is Renwar 2005 coming to you from WoW TCG Talk. In our previous videos in this playlist, we talked about the healing deck profile and the control deck profile. And in this video, we will be discussing the DPS deck profiles for raiding in WoW TCG. This video is likely going to be longer than the previous videos because we're going to be discussing multiple ways to do damage in a raid. We're first going to be discussing the ally deck profiles, and then we'll follow up with the ability and then the weapon deck profiles. However, first we're going to discuss the type of deck that you don't want to play as a DPS class in raiding. That is actually may seem like one of the more common decks that you might see in raiding, just because they're common in PvP. Now, just because a deck is good in PvP does not mean it's going to be good in a raid setting. PvP is designed to be very aggressive in most cases, especially with ally builds, and raids are designed to really disrupt ally play. So we're going to talk about first one of the most common strong PvP decks that you should probably never use in a raid unless you really find a way to tweak it good, is the Grand Crusader ally deck. So if you're not familiar with the Grand Crusader, what it does is it's a paladin ability that allows allies you control with cost 2 or less to have +2/+2. So if you're playing an ally spam deck with most of your allies being 1, 2, or even 0 cost, they come in very fast and you buff them turn 3, and they can typically kill in a PvP match by turn 4 or turn 5. In a raid setting, this is very, very weak. You don't want to use this style of deck because typically the card draw is very bad. As we discussed in the previous videos, card draw is essential for every kind of deck that you're raiding with, because you've got to have cards in your hands to last clear beyond turn 10. In a lot of cases, especially with a gauntlet raid, you need to be prepared to last long. So you don't have the card draw, so you're likely going to get board wiped some point in the game, and there's not enough recovery because you don't have enough card draw to recover well with. Also with raids, with this style of deck, you've got one ability that's pumping your entire deck. So it's very easy for the raid just to either turn Grand Crusader off or just outright destroy it, which then all of a sudden you're playing with a very weak DPS deck. So what I would recommend with a Grand Crusader deck is, in raiding, don't even use it. So we're going to look at a style of ally deck that does do well in raiding. Whoop. Let's fix that. That was my mistake. So we're going to look at the Night Elf build. This is a core build, but does phenomenally well in raiding. In some cases, it can do too well if you're not playing against a strong raid boss. But this is a Night Elf build. The hero that we use is Sylvanas Windrunner. We're not going to go too much into the depth on her abilities, but this is a deck that can be used well in PvP or in PvE settings. The card draw in this case: Tear of the Tides quest. You can reveal top 5 cards, put a revealed ability, ally, equipment with cost 3 or more into your hand, and the rest in the bottom of your deck. The Open to the Dark Portal. You can choose a Horde or Alliance race, then reveal the top 4 of your deck. Put a revealed ally of chosen race into your hand and the rest of the bottom of your deck. So it makes these two style of quest cards allow you to go digging for what you need. It's also card draw. And instead of removing cards, you're actually just cycling back. Alright, Ashenvale is very important for this deck because every ally you're playing is a Night Elf. So what haste does, since it doesn't describe it on the card here, all Night Elves in your hand have haste 1. Well, when an ally in play that you control deals damage to a hero, that you pay 1 less to play that next ally card from your hand. You'll see a lot more haste cards and a few more as we go through this. Alright, so card draw comes from your piercing shots, but you're also going to get some damage buff with this card as well. So it's hard to read, so I'll read it through. Damage that heroes and allies you control would deal is unpreventable. Okay. At the end of your turn, if an opposing hero was dealt 5 or more damage this turn, you may draw a card. So this is your card draw. It's very easy for a Night Elf deck to deal more than 5 damage a turn. So this is good to have out, and you can stack it. So if you deal, let's say you deal 6 in one turn, you got 2 of these out, you're drawing 2 cards in your turn. So this keeps cards in your hands, plus the quests that you've been playing. Alright, so damage pump card, Wrath of the Ages. It has the Riff effect, so you can choose a Horde or Alliance race. You pay 1 less to play this ability for each ally you control of chosen race. So in this case, you choose Night Elf. It's very possible to play this card for free because you're pumping out so many allies very quickly. So it's going to double the damage. We'll show the pair in a minute with the ally that you would typically want to do that with. Next card is Legguards of Legion. When this armor enters play, you can name Demon, Horde, or Alliance race. So again, you would call Night Elf. You pay 1 less to play allies of the named race to a minimum of 1. Your hero has 1 assault for each ally you control of that named race. So not only is this pumping your damage, but it's reducing the cost of your Night Elves that you're going to be playing, on top of the haste reduced cost as well. So it's, in some ways, it works very similar to a harmonized deck, if not a little faster. Alright, so now we're going to cover the allies. Darnassus Warrior is a very fun card to have, especially for proccing haste, because just for it entering play, it deals 1 damage. When this ally enters play, he deals 1 melee damage to target hero. So just playing him, you're going to proc your haste for all your other Night Elves. Nasala, she's elusive. It's one of the benefits of playing a Night Elves versus the deck I previously showed you. Your allies are more difficult to destroy typically in this deck because some of them have the elusive keyword that doesn't allow the raid just to come out and swing at them. But when this ally enters play, target Night Elf you control has Spell Shield this turn. Notice that she is instant, so you can save her, play her on your opponent's turn. So if your opponent is trying to outright deal, let's say, a certain amount of damage to an ally that would kill it, you can actually play her, give it Spell Shield, and you can save that ally. Naisha, when she enters play, you can name a card. Opponents can't play cards with that name. So there's a control factor with her. So if there's a certain interrupt, like with Naxxramas, there's a really annoying card called Disrupting Shout. It's his main interrupt in that deck. You can actually play Nasala, and they can't play that card anymore if you name Disrupting Shout. Night Elf Arcanist, she has haste 3. This card is not very strong, but it becomes useful to use this card when paired with another card we'll cover in a second, Lord Kur'talos, because if you haste her in, she's a free. She comes in, she's a 0 cost, and she can pump the damage of Lord Kur'talos. Thadrus, he's a protector. He can't attack. However, when this ally deals damage to an ally, destroy that ally. So we use him as a protector. So if they're swinging at you with a big guy, you can use him, and the strike back that he will do as a protector to that ally will cause that ally to be destroyed. Excuse me. So your best damage card in the deck is Lord Kur'talos Ravencrest. He has Spell Shield, so a raid just can't come out and shoot him. But Kur'talos has attack equal to the combined cost of other allies you control. So you are going to be playing a plethora of different allies. A lot of them are going to have high cost. So his attack can get buffed rather quickly. And then you pair him with Archdruid Fandral Staghelm. He's also elusive, but you can tap Staghelm, target ally. In this case, you would target Ravencrest. Has Absorb, Ferocity, Sentinel, and Stealth. So the damage that at that point Ravencrest would do with the buff from Fandral would also heal you from the absorb, give him ferocity if you played him that turn, give him sentinel, which would allow him to attack twice, and he would have stealth that turn so you could go through protectors. Now, imagine that paired with, again, Wrath of Ages, where you can double the attack and attack twice. So, that is the main combo of this deck. However, obviously you can use this with any combination of other allies that we're going to cover here. Alright, so with any ally deck that you play in a raid, recovery is very important. Probably the strongest recovery within this deck is used with Tyrande. Now, it's very blurred here, but I'll read it out. She is elusive. When Tyrande enters play, you may shuffle any number of alliance allies from your graveyard into your deck. If you do, put a 0/1 Wisp ally token into play for each ally shuffled back into the deck this way. So if you've been board wiped, instead of them sitting in your graveyard, you can have them shuffled into your deck. Now, the second effect of this card, at the end of your turn, for each Wisp you control, Tyrande deals 1 nature damage to target opposing hero and heals 1 damage for each hero and ally you control. So it's a healing effect and a direct damage effect, punishing the raid for wiping your board. So it's a very strong card for recovery, making sure cards are still in your deck, and for punishing your raid opponent for clearing your board. Belthira, the Blackthorn, she's elusive, haste 3, and stealth. Okay, so when this ally deals combat damage to a hero, remove the top card of that hero's controller's deck from the game. Then search his deck, graveyard, hand for all cards with that name and remove it from the game. Now, in most raid settings, not all, you cannot remove cards from the game. However, because of her haste 3, elusive, and stealth, she is still a very formidable damage ally. She hits for 5. She works well with Fandral in terms of swinging and healing. So do not underestimate this card for raiding. Another fun card is Shandris Feathermoon. She has haste 4, ferocity. Again, this resolution is a little bit low on this, but I'll read it out. At the end of your turn, put Shandris into her owner's hand from play. You can also discard another card named Shandris Feathermoon. Shandris has long range and can attack 2 heroes. Attack 2 opposing heroes and or allies at the same time this turn. She's very good at pumping Lord Kur'talos because she's an 8-drop. And after she's been hastened, she's only a 4-drop. If paired with Ashenvale, she's a 3-drop. If paired with Legguards of Legion, she can cost up as low as 1. Very effective card. So she comes in, she can swing right away for 8. She pumps Kur'talos. She can even use the effect of Archdruid. So it's a very effective card. Lastly, we have Warden Maiev. She's elusive, ferocity, long range, protector, spell shield, and stealth. She has haste X, where X is the highest cost among allies controlled that dealt damage to an opposing hero this turn. So you strike with all your allies this turn, and she can essentially come in for free with her haste effects paired with Ashenvale and Legguards of Legion. Again, this is a very strong deck for raiding. It can get board wiped, but it recovers better than most ally decks, and it can swing and hit very hard. The bigger the threat a DPS deck is in a raid, the less likely the raid will focus on your control or your healer decks that are trying to shut the raid down and take care of the rest of your group. You want to be a big threat because you'll move through bosses quicker, and the quicker you can move through things, the less resources the raid will have to use against you. Now, we're going to cover some other deck builds that are not ally based. The next one we're going to talk about is actually an ability deck. Some players like allies, some players like using abilities. So this one in particular is a Moonkin build, utilizing Tiho Skyspeaker. I probably butchered that name. Excuse me. He is a 4-cost flip. You can choose one. You can deal 3 to hero or ally, or you can heal 6. His card draw with request is Forces of Jadenar. You pay 1 after playing ability, you draw a card. Now, Solanial's Belonging is an interesting choice in this deck because you pay 4, choose 1, put an ability card from your graveyard on top of your deck, or draw a card. If your hero is a Blood Elf, you may choose both. Well, obviously we're not a Blood Elf or Thorn. So why would we want to play this quest if we can only pay 4 to put an ability from our graveyard on top of our deck? That seems very expensive. Well, we're going to cover a little bit later an ability called Dream State. Actually, next card. When you play a balance ability, you draw a card. So what you can do is you can pay your 4, put it on top of your deck from your graveyard, and then play a cheap cost 1 cost ability to then be able to draw from the balance effect to draw that card. Alright, so next we're going to talk a little bit about the control of the deck. Now, for a DPS deck, this deck actually has quite a bit of control that can be very supportive in your raid. Barkskin. Your ability, ally, or equipment cards can't be interrupted. It's very important in any raid, especially a man raid that may want to try to interrupt the cards you're playing, because some of the cards you're going to be playing in this deck are very either disruptive or very abusive. So they're going to want to interrupt you quite frequently, and they're not going to be able to interrupt you with this Barkskin in play. They would literally have to destroy a 1-cost ability just to have the capability to interrupt you, which likely isn't going to happen often because there's going to be bigger threats on the board than Barkskin. Cyclone. You can attach it to a hero or ally, put 3 win counters on Cyclone. Attached character can't attack or protect. At the start of your turn, remove a win counter from Cyclone. If you remove the last one, destroy Cyclone. So it shuts down the raid boss from swinging. So let's say there's a big swinging ally or a raid boss that can hit hard. You just Cyclone them, and for 3 turns they can't swing to deal that damage. The next card is Natural Order. Destroy target ability or equipment. Again, they're not expecting a DPS class to be able to control them. So the fact that you can actually destroy one of their abilities is just that more beneficial for your raid and can save your control mage or control deck that's playing with you. You can save them some cards. Hurricane. This is probably your most devastating control card that can still do a lot of damage in this deck. This ability is played with 2 win counters. Opposing heroes and allies can't attack or protect. At the start of your turn, your hero deals 2 nature damage to each opposing hero and ally. Then remove a win counter. If none remain, destroy this ability. So this deck is going to pump damage later in the game with some cards I'll show you in a minute. This card can do up to 5 or more damage a turn. So it can end up wiping the raid boss's board. Utopia, this is more of a PvP card, but sometimes, believe it or not, it actually comes in handy, especially if you've been controlled pretty heavily. Raid decks that can do this are like Black Temple, especially late, but most raids play tokens as allies, not actual card cost cards. And this card destroys all tokens. Put each other ability, ally, and equipment into its owner's resource row face down, then exhaust it. Now this also affects your party members, so you'll rarely ever use this card. Again, it's really more of a PvP card. But if you're going in for a kill turn, there is a nice combo with this card for the different card in your deck that we'll cover in a minute. This is your heal. It's your, other than the hero flip, it's your only other heal, but it heals your entire party. So again, when a DPS class can deal a lot of damage, but also be able to heal everyone in your raid, it's very powerful. Your hero heals double X damage from each friendly hero and ally. So if you're paying 4 for this, you're going to heal everyone for 8. Alright, now let's get into the damage. There's quite a bit of damage cards in here. We'll cover 2 first before we start at the beginning. We're going to cover Ancient Moonkin form. So this is instant ability. If your hero would deal or heal damage, it deals or heals that much plus 1 instead. While you control 5 or more abilities, you can tap this card and you draw a card. What can stack with that is Earth and Moon. If a hero or ally you control deals arcane damage or nature damage, it deals that much plus 2 instead, and this ability can stack. So just between Ancient Moonkin form and Earth and Moon, you can deal 3 damage, or 5 if you have 2 Earth and Moons, 7 if you've got 3 Earth and Moons, and so forth. So now let's look at some of the damage cards. Insect Swarm. Attach to target hero or ally, and your hero deals 2 nature damage to it. If it's pumped, it's going to deal 5 or more for a 1 cost. It's a highly effective card. And then it stays attached and gives that hero -2 attack, which then can be paired with an ongoing ability to help proc Moonkin form. Because if you control multiple abilities, you can use them to tap this card and draw a card. This card probably should have been in my control deck or control section, but you can put target ally into its controller's resource row, face down and exhausted. Now, why would you use that? Well, oftentimes the raid is using certain allies, like in Black Temple, they have costs. They have certain allies that can be very disruptive, and so putting them into resource row is better than having them on the field of play. Stormfire. Your hero deals 3 arcane damage to target hero or ally, and then you draw a card. Gale Winds is a fun card. This is what accelerates you. It's not good to stack it, even though you can. It doesn't really help you that much to stack it. But ongoing, abilities you control can be exhausted to pay costs as though they were resources. You have a lot of ongoing abilities. You have Gale Winds, Earth and Moon, Ancient Moonkin form, Insect Swarm, Dream State, Hurricane, Cyclone, Barkskin, and Moonfire. So you have a lot of resource acceleration by counting your abilities as resources themselves. And then Lunar Barrage is your big nuke. When you play this ability, you may exhaust any number of ongoing abilities you control, which I just showed you there's a lot. Copy this ability for each ability exhausted this way. Your hero deals 2 arcane damage to target hero or ally. Now again, let's just say you have Ancient Moonkin form and Earth and Moon in play. That's plus 3 damage. So each one of these exhausted ongoings is now 5 damage, 5 damage, 5 damage, 5 damage. It can obliterate, and if you notice, you may choose new targets for the copies. So you can make it even be an area effect. Oh, excuse me. Now, you've noticed a ton of ongoing abilities being played and normal interplay cards. You get to draw a card for each one of those. Only one is a restoration. It requests balance ability. Every single card on this row is a balanced ability. So you can literally draw a card for playing a card once Dream Stake is in play, and it can stack. So for each ability you play, if you've got 2, you can draw 2 cards. Card draw in this deck is insane. It is very possible to be discarding at the end of your turn because you have too many cards in hand. Now, and the last card we're going to cover is Moonfire. It's not going to look like much, but there's a very deceptive combo in this deck utilizing this. Attach a target hero or ally, and your hero deals 1 arcane damage to it. Ongoing, at the start of your turn, if Moonfire is in play, your hero deals 1 arcane damage to attached character. Then, you can pay 1 at any time to put Moonfire back into your hand. Now, how you utilize this is you wanted to have it pumped with Ancient Moonkin form and Earth and Moon. So you play it for 2. Hopefully you'll have Dream Stake out, draw a card. You can then pay through Gale Winds one of your other cards that you have ongoing to pick it up, and then pay 2 and play it again. You're going to have so many ongoing abilities, or you may have a lot of resources after playing Utopia. It's very possible to have up to 20 or more resources available to you either through ongoing abilities from Gale Winds or after playing a Utopia and putting stuff into your resource row. So you can pay 2, deal 5, pay 1, pick it up. Pay 2, deal 5, pay 1, pick it up. It's a Moonfire spam, just like they can do in the real online game. It's a very effective combo, and it also lets you to hit multiple targets that the raid boss may be throwing at you. So not only did Lunar Barrage hit really hard, but now Moonfire's hitting hard too. And what's great about this is you can play Moonfire, stick it on them, leave it, and on their turn proceed to attack different targets on their turn based off what they're playing. That is what we like to call the Boomkin effect on this deck. We're going to cover now, the next deck will be the Weapons deck. Alright, so before we really dive into this, one of the reasons why it's good to have a good variance of DPS classes in your raid is it makes things hard to target. So let's say you've got a healer, a control deck, and then 3 DPS decks. If all 3 DPS decks are ally based, it becomes much easier for the raid to deal with allies, because then they can focus all their abilities on ability destruction or interrupts on your healer or your control, and they can put all of the ally destruction towards the DPS. So if you had 1 or 2 ally decks and then or 1 or 2 ability decks intermixed, now you've got a more balanced group to deal with more dynamic situations. And you also become harder to target. So there's a lot of raid abilities that just destroy all allies. Boom, they're all gone. Well, if you're playing a DPS deck that's using weapons or abilities, maybe only one of your DPS guys gets slowed down for a few turns, or it can give them enough time to recover, whereas your ability and weapon decks won't be disrupted. And the great thing about the abilities and the weapons decks is if they're getting disrupted, the way they're disrupted actually eases up the burden on your healing and your control decks. Because if they're destroying abilities from your DPS decks rather than your control has ways of saving cards and interacting with the raid much easier, and also alleviates the pressure from your healer to be able to take care of any problems that may be coming into play. So it's very good to be diversified amongst your DPS classes. Alright, so let's get into this weapon deck. Sephiron, the Poised, I hope I said that right. His hero flip is amazing, but you pay 3, you flip him, you can ready him and one of your weapons. Not many quests in this deck, but you have Forces of Jadenar. You pay 1 to complete this quest, draw a card. Eye of the Storms, good control. You play a card, get an honor counter. You can tap it, remove 4 honor counters, exhaust up to 4 target heroes and or allies, so you can slow down the raid. There is some control in this deck, but the purpose of this control is much different than the controls of the previous decks that we've discussed. The control for this deck is to be able to open the way for you to swing with weapons. So if the way is closed by protectors being played, or there's conspicuous, or if the raid's putting conspicuous on you, such as the Construct Wing in Naxxramas, being able to remove those effects allows you to swing in hard with weapons without having to worry about using stealth. So Squall Totem, when this ability enters play, exhausts all opposing heroes and allies. When an opposing hero or ally attacks or protects, you may exhaust a second target hero or ally. Paired with Wavestorm, when an opposing ability, ally, or equipment readies, put it into its owner's hand. Very strong card. Oftentimes this card gets destroyed because it's so disruptive for the raid boss. But this is a great way to put cards back into their hands. Most of the time, the cards that are coming back into their hands are tokens, and in that case, they would be destroyed. So it's a great ally clear in raiding. You have an interrupt in this deck. Choose one or both. Interrupt target ability, or exhaust target hero or ally. Great card for shutting down protectors or interrupting cards, or doing both at the same time. Elemental Purge allows you to destroy ability. If your hero deals, your hero deals 3 nature damage to target or to that ability controller's hero. Now let's get into the meat of how this deck does damage, and it can do a lot of damage. So you're going to be playing weapons, and you want to make sure that you've got dual wield capabilities. So you have Shamanistic Dual Wield. You pay 1 less to strike with weapons. Your hero has dual wield. So first weapon is the Annihilator. Annihilator. Combat damage dealt by your hero with Annihilator can't be prevented. Does 3 damage, has 2 strike cost. If you have Shamanistic Dual Wield out, it only costs you 1 to strike with. Now the reason why this type of card is in there over maybe some cheaper swings is you need to be able to do unpreventable damage. So if you're playing against Deathwing or an automated raid with equipment or even dungeons, or if they play a card that says, hey, I can't be dealt damage this turn, you can make your damage unpreventable. It's a very good card to have. Just as it's maybe not be your best swinging card, but the fact when you swing with weapons, you swing typically with 1 swing. Even with both weapons out, it's 1 combat, and if they stop it, you might be swinging for 20 or 40 damage. And if they stop that 1, the fact that it makes it unpreventable damage, that's a very good card to have. Alright, Blackout. When Blackout enters play, exhaust target hero or ally. It's an instant weapon. That character can't ready during its controller's next ready step. So not only can you play this on your opponent's turn to stop an attack, but it comes into play, and at the start of your next turn, you're ready to swing with it for 3. It costs 2 to swing with, or 1 if Shamanistic Dual Wield is in play. The next card is Mangor's Bite. This also gives dual wield. So we have a weapon now that gives dual wield just in case Shamanistic Dual Wield gets destroyed. Double the attack of this and other weapons you control. So now you're damage pumping your weapons. Costs 0 to strike with. Split Great Hammer. This is a very cool weapon effect. If your hero would deal combat damage to a hero with this weapon, it may deal that much divided as you choose among any number of opposing heroes and or allies instead. So, let's say you're dual wielding Split Great Hammer and Mangor's Bite. Your Great Hammer is actually hitting for 8 instead of 4, but you're still only splitting the 4 damage. So you would have to, let's say there's a hero and 3 allies. Well, you can choose, I'm going to deal 1 to the hero and then 1 to each ally. Well, then Mangors then would double it to 2 to each. We're going to show how this can be pumped even further on the next row. Storm Strike. Ready your hero in 1 of your melee weapons. The next time your hero would deal nature damage this turn, it deals that much plus 2 instead. None of these weapons deal nature damage. However, this card, which we'll cover in a second, does turn your weapons into nature damage. But this is a great way, especially if you've doubled your damage. It's a good damage pump because it allows you to attack again. Now this is a crafty draw card. So one of the things that you may have noticed if you're doing any kind of card search by making a weapon deck is shamans in particular, especially enhancement shamans like this deck, they want to attach abilities to their weapons. That is actually not a very good strategy in raiding, or really in that fact in PvP either, because it's too easy to destroy the weapon. And if the weapon is destroyed that the ability is attached to, the ability is destroyed as well. So you lose both. So you're not going to see abilities in here like Rock Biter or Flame Tongue because they're too easy to be destroyed. The exception to that is Tidal Infusion, because it can be attached to an ally or a weapon you control. So you can literally attach this card to one of your totems or one of these weapons. So now they have to choose whether they're going to destroy your weapon or your allies, which are your totems. When attached ally or when attached card exhausts, you may draw a card. You can actually exhaust ongoing abilities as well. Excuse me. So each time you strike, you're going to draw a card wherever this is attached to. You can Storm Strike to re-ready. You can even Hero Flip to re-ready and strike again and draw a second card. Now, staying on the subject of things to be destroyed that are attached to weapons, instead of attaching abilities to weapons, it's better to play ongoing abilities that are separate from your weapons, such as elemental weapons here. Each of your weapon becomes a nature weapon and has X attack, where X is its cost. Now, if you notice these weapons, the Split Great Hammer and Mangor's Bite have 4 cost. So now your Mangor's Bite becomes a 5 attack, and your Split Great Hammer becomes an 8 attack. Then it can be doubled by Mangor's Bite, and now Mangor becomes a 10 attack, and your Split Great Hammer becomes a 16 attack. If you're dual wielding both, the damage is devastating. Now, if the raid is looking at your deck and they're seeing these cards in play, he has to make a decision. Do I destroy the elemental weapons or do I destroy Mangor's Bite? At that point, if he destroys, he has to decide then what to destroy. Because elemental weapons is not attached to Mangor's Bite, he can't destroy both with one card. Now he has to choose one or the other, and you're still damage pumped either with Mangors or with elemental weapons. It's harder for him to destroy both than one in one card. So when you look at Tidal Infusion, it is attaching to an ally or a weapon. It's not going to be smart of you to attach it to a very powerful weapon. If anything, let's say you're dual wielding Mangors with Annihilator. It's going to be better for you to attach it to Annihilator, because Annihilator, if it's destroyed, it's not going to hurt you as bad as if you lost Mangor's Bite. They will still see that card, the draw card, as a threat, but the damage that you could do with Mangors is much more devastating. So it preserves your card draw by having it on a weaker card that's not as threatening to the raid boss. Feral Spirits is really more of a protection card, but it's very good for damage in this deck. But you pay 4, put 2 4/4 Spirit Wolf ally tokens into play with Protector. Well, I use this card for damage because it's 8 damage there, and we're about to pump its damage. The most powerful card you have is Legacy of the Horde. If a friendly hero or ally would deal damage, it deals double that much instead. If a friendly hero or ally would be dealt damage, prevent half that damage rounded up. So you're now reducing all the damage that your entire party takes. Your friends playing healers, control, and other DPS classes, they take half damage, and they all deal double damage. So you're buffing not just your deck, you're buffing everybody's damage and also their prevention. So now, on the damage side of things, you now have 3 damage pumps. You have Legacy of the Horde, Elementium Weapons, and Mangor's Bite. Legacy of the Horde, Elementium Weapons can stack on each other. So you can have 2 or 3 Elementium Weapons, or 2 or 3 Legacy of the Hordes. I have actually dealt with one swing in this deck up to 128 damage using that combo effects. Very strong weapon attacks. If you're wanting to split the damage, if you need to do some area effect, you've got that through the Great Split Hammer. If you want to just deal one massive hit to the boss, you can do that. So that covers all of our DPS style decks that would be good for any players looking to learn how to be better at raiding. I appreciate your time watching these videos. The next video I will be uploading will likely be a tank spec, so you'll be welcome to watch that when I'm able to get it loaded. But other than that, I will be posting the deck lists of the important decks in the description below. Be sure to check that out. Copy if you need to, load it in Tabletop Simulator, or build it at home. Have a good day. Thanks again.